You need to step away from this seat. First class is not for people like you." The words cut through the cabin like a blade, sharp and deliberate. Flight attendant Bradley Hoffman stood over the seat 1A, his voice loud enough for every passenger to hear. He was not asking. He was not suggesting. He was commanding. The man in the seat did not move. He wore a simple grey hoodie and dark joggers. No Rolex glinting on his wrist. No designer labels screaming for attention. Just calm eyes that had seen this scenario play out 100 times before. Bradley's hand hovered near the call button, ready to summon security at a moment's notice. His lips curled into that particular smile that certain people wear when they believe they hold all the power in a room. "Sir, I am going to need you to respond." Bradley continued, his voice dripping with manufactured authority. "This is a first-class cabin. There has clearly been some kind of mistake with your seating." Around them, the first-class cabin had gone silent. A woman draped in designer logos watched from across the aisle, her eyebrows raised in what looked like approval. A businessman in row 2 lowered his newspaper, curious. A young mother in row 5 pulled her daughter closer, uncomfortable with what was unfolding. The man in 1A still did not speak. He simply looked up at Bradley, with an expression that was impossible to read. Not angry, not afraid, just patient, like a man who had learned long ago that silence could be its own weapon. "I am not going to ask again," Bradley said, his voice rising now, playing to the audience he had gathered. "You need to move, or I am calling the captain." What Bradley Hoffman did not know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 90 days, the man he was humiliating would own the entire airline. Not sue them, not settle with them, own them. And he would fire Bradley Hoffman personally in front of the same colleagues who were watching this moment unfold. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 3 hours. Back to the moment the first domino fell. Back to a quiet lounge in Terminal 4 where a man worth $8 billion was about to be told he did not belong. This is the story of Terence Blake, a man who was removed from a plane for the crime of sitting while black, a man who did not yell, did not sue, did not go viral. He did something far more devastating. He waited, and then he struck. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been judged by how you looked instead of who you are? Have you ever walked into a room where you paid to be a restaurant, a hotel, a first-class cabin, and felt eyes on you that said you did not belong? If this story hits close to home, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me about a time when someone looked at you and decided before you ever opened your mouth exactly who you were and what you deserved. And if you believe in karma, real karma, not the hashtag kind, but the kind that takes its time and strikes when you least expect it, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about power, patience, and payback. The people who humiliated Terence Blake thought they were untouchable. They thought they were protected by uniforms, by protocols, by a system designed to believe people who look like them over people who look like him. They were wrong. Now let us rewind to where it all began. 3 hours earlier, the Horizon Lounge at JFK Terminal 4 was a symphony of forced calm. Soft instrumental jazz trickled from hidden speakers, the kind of music designed to make wealthy people feel even wealthier. The air carried notes of high-end espresso and the anxious whisper of designer perfume. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of planes taxiing in the grey afternoon light, and every surface gleamed with the kind of polish that whispered money. This was a space designed to insulate its patrons from the democratic chaos of the main terminal, a holding pen for the 1%, a place where the right credit card could buy you silence, comfort, and the illusion that you were somehow different from the masses rushing to their gates below. Terence Blake sat in a high-backed leather chair near the window, his long legs stretched out, ankles crossed. He wore dark grey cashmere joggers, unstructured, comfortable, and worth more than most people's monthly rent, and a matching hoodie that hung loosely on his athletic frame. On his wrist sat a simple black watch. To the untrained eye, it was nothing special. To anyone who knew watches, it was a Patek Philippe 5711, a timepiece so exclusive, so quietly expensive that it practically screamed old money without making a sound. But no one in the lounge was looking at his watch. They were looking at his face, his skin, and they were making calculations. To anyone who glanced his way, Terence Blake was just a tall black man in loungewear. Maybe an athlete killing time before a flight. Maybe a musician. Maybe someone's assistant who had wandered into the wrong room. Nobody would guess he was what Wall Street called a whale, the kind of investor whose decisions moved markets, whose phone calls made CEOs sweat, whose signature on a term sheet could make or break companies worth billions. On his lap sat a lightweight carbon fiber laptop. The screen did not show a movie or a sports game. It displayed a dense, color-coded matrix of derivatives models, tracking risk exposure for a $2.8 billion stake in Japanese sovereign bonds. At that very moment, while jazz played and espresso machines hissed, Terence Blake was deciding the fate of a fund larger than the GDP of several small countries. A shadow fell over his keyboard. "Excuse me, sir." Terence did not look up. He recognized the tone instantly. The sir carried a knife's edge of inquiry, that particular inflection that transformed a word of respect into a word of suspicion. "Can I help you with something?" The voice belonged to a lounge attendant, a young white man with a tight smile and an even tighter blazer. His name tag read Daniel. His eyes kept flicking to Terence's hoodie. His joggers, his face like he was running calculations that did not add up. "Just water," Terence said, still not looking up. "No ice." "Thank you." "Right." The attendant did not move. "It is just this seating area is reserved for our first-class international passengers." There it was, the first paper cut of the day. Terence's fingers paused on the keyboard. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his head. His eyes, calm, analytical, revealing nothing, met the attendant's. "What part of my boarding pass?" Terence said, his voice, a low baritone that filled the space without rising, suggested, "I am not one of them." The attendant stammered. "Well, I had not seen you come in, and I meant to check." "You checked me at the desk." Terence held up his boarding pass. "A stark black first-class ticket for Global Voyager Airlines Flight 212 to London Heathrow. Seat 1A. You scanned it yourself." The attendant Daniel flushed red from his collar to his hairline. He had in fact scanned it. But seeing the man now slouched in joggers with a laptop, he had simply assumed there had been some kind of mistake, some kind of error. "Because surely—" "My apologies, Mr. Thorne. Right away. Water, no ice." Terence nodded once and returned to his screen. The attendant hurried away, and the moment passed like it had never happened. But it had happened, and Terence felt it. A paper cut. That is what he called these moments. They did not draw blood. They did not leave marks. But 1,000 of them accumulated over a lifetime could make you bleed out slowly without anyone ever seeing the wound. He was used to it. He had been collecting paper cuts since he was 12 years old, when a teacher told him he was surprisingly articulate. Since he was 16 when a store security guard followed him through a mall for 45 minutes. Since he was 22 when the world started teaching him exactly what a black man in America could expect from spaces that were not built for him. Terence Blake was the only black founder of a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm. Apex Venture Partners, $15 billion in assets under management. Offices in New York, London, Hong Kong, and Dubai. A portfolio that included stakes in airlines' hotel chains. tech companies and pharmaceutical giants. He had graduated top of his class at Wharton, cut his teeth as a quantitative analyst at Goldman Sachs, where he had built models that predicted market movements with terrifying accuracy. Left at 30 to build his own empire when he realized that no matter how much money he made for other people, there would always be a ceiling made of something harder than glass. He navigated the snow-white world of high finance like a ghost in their machine. Always watching, always calculating, always underestimated. He preferred it that way. Underestimation, he had learned, was the most powerful weapon a man could carry. At 22, fresh out of Wharton with honors, he had walked into his first hedge fund interview. The partner, a man whose name Terence had long since forgotten, looked at his resume, then at his face, and said, "We were expecting someone different." He did not get the job. At 26, he closed his first $50 million deal for Goldman. His supervisor took the credit. "Terence is a great team player," the man told the partners at the year-end review. "Very supportive, real collaborative energy." Terence's name was not mentioned once. At 30, when he tried to raise capital for his own fund, 17 investors passed. 16 gave vague excuses about timing, market conditions, risk profiles. One, an older man whose family money went back 4 generations, told him candidly over whiskey, "You are brilliant, Terence, maybe the smartest guy I have met this year, but my LPs are not ready for your profile. Your profile." The words still echoed sometimes late at night. He raised $2 billion anyway, from sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East who cared more about returns than race. From pension funds in Scandinavia who evaluated his models, not his melanin. From family offices in Asia who saw his track record and did not blink. And every year he grew quieter, more patient, more dangerous. Now at 44, sitting in a lounge where an attendant had questioned his right to exist, Terence felt the familiar sting. But this time he did not flinch. This time he smiled. Because this time he had options. Across the lounge near the window, a young woman had watched the entire exchange. Rachel Foster, 28, a travel blogger with 500,000 followers, and an eye for injustice. She had raised her phone slightly when the confrontation started, then lowered it when Terence handled it himself. Their eyes met briefly. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, the kind of look that said, "I saw that. I know what that was. You are not crazy." Rachel did not know who Terence Blake was, but she knew what she had witnessed, and something told her this was not the last time today she would see that man treated like he did not belong. She was right. Terence returned to his derivatives model. The numbers swam before him, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating different odds, running different scenarios. He had a flight to catch, a meeting in London, a deal worth $300 million that needed his attention. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a different kind of calculation was beginning. The kind that had nothing to do with bonds or risk exposure or market movements. The kind that asked, how many more paper cuts before the bleeding stops? He did not know the answer yet, but he was about to find out. His phone buzzed. A text from Nina Rodriguez, his executive assistant. "Flight is on time. Car will be waiting at Heathrow. You need anything?" He typed back. "Just peace and quiet for 7 hours." She responded with a single emoji, a prayer hands symbol. Terence almost smiled. Nina knew him better than anyone. She knew that peace and quiet for a man who looked like him in spaces like this was never guaranteed. It was always borrowed, always conditional, always subject to someone else's approval. Not for much longer, he thought, and did not know why. He closed his laptop, tucked it into his bag, and stood. The boarding call for Flight 212 would come soon. First-class passengers first, as always. At least that part of the system still worked as advertised. He walked through the lounge, an island of calm in a sea of anxious energy. He had no idea what was waiting for him at the gate. Gate B24 was chaos wrapped in fluorescent lighting. The boarding area for Global Voyager Airlines Flight 212 to London Heathrow was packed with passengers in various states of anxiety. Business travelers clutched laptops and worried expressions. Families corralled children who had grown restless after hours in the terminal. A group of college students compared passport photos and laughed too loudly. And at the front of it all, managing the line with an iron fist, stood Linda Morrison. Linda was 52 years old with sharp features and a peroxide blonde bob that looked like a helmet. She had worked this gate for 11 years, and in that time she had developed a particular way of looking at passengers, a quick up-and-down assessment that sorted people into categories before they ever handed over their documents. Important. Not important. Trouble. Not trouble. She was proud of her instincts. She believed they kept the line moving, kept the flights on time, kept problems from boarding the aircraft, where they would become someone else's headache. She did not think of herself as prejudiced. She thought of herself as efficient. The line for first class was short, maybe 8 passengers waiting to board ahead of economy. They shuffled forward one by one, and Linda processed them with mechanical precision. Scan, smile, nod. Scan, smile, nod. A rhythm as familiar as breathing. Then Terence Blake stepped up to the counter. He handed over his passport and his black boarding pass. His face was neutral, pleasant even. He had done this 1,000 times. Linda's fingers tapped on her keyboard. Tap, 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 tap. She frowned. She looked at her screen, then at Terence, then back at her screen. The rhythm broke. "There seems to be a problem, sir," she said. Her voice carried that particular bureaucratic skepticism, the tone of someone who had found a discrepancy and intended to make it everyone's problem. "Oh," Terence kept his voice neutral. "Pleasant, unthreatening. My system is showing a conflict with your seat." She squinted at the screen like it had personally offended her. "It's to be blocked." "It is not." Linda's eyes snapped to his face. She was not used to passengers contradicting her so quickly, so confidently. "So what the system says is what matters." Her voice had hardened now, the customer service veneer cracking. "I can put you in business." 12, it is a window. Terence did not move, did not raise his voice, did not change his expression. 12F is a middle seat in the aft business cabin, he said quietly. The configuration on the 777-300ER has a 1-2-1 layout in business class, but the F column in row 12 is a middle bulkhead position, and I am not sitting there. I am sitting in 1A. Linda's eyes widened. First in surprise, how did this man in a hoodie know aircraft configurations, and then in anger? The anger of someone whose authority had been challenged. The anger of someone who was not used to being corrected. "Sir, I do not have time to argue about aircraft layouts." Her voice had risen now loud enough for the people behind Terence to hear. "You are holding up my line." "You," Terence said, leaning in just slightly, his voice dropping even lower, "are the one creating the problem. Scan my pass. Let me on the plane." Behind him the line was growing restless. An older white man in a loud Hermes tie, the kind of tie that cost more than most people's car payments, huffed audibly. "Can we move this along?" he demanded. "Some of us have connections to make." Linda felt the pressure building. She looked at the impatient passengers behind Terence. She looked at Terence himself. Tall black, wearing clothes that did not match her mental image of first class. She made a calculation. The wrong calculation. "Sir, if you are going to be disruptive, I can call security." The threat hung in the air like a declaration of war. Terence almost laughed. Almost. He caught it in time, swallowed it down, kept his face perfectly still. Disruptive, he repeated his voice, carrying just enough to reach the ears of the passengers nearby. I have been standing still this entire time. I have not raised my voice. I have not moved. I am asking politely to sit in the $14,000 seat I paid for 6 months ago. Linda's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a voice cut in from behind her. Linda, what is the hold-up? A young Hispanic man hurried over, tablet in hand. His name tag read Carlos Torres, and his title read Gate Supervisor. He was 29 years old, with kind eyes, and the harried expression of someone who spent his days putting out fires that other people started. This gentleman, Linda, spat the word like it tasted bad, is refusing to accept a new seat assignment. His ticket is flagged. Carlos glanced at his tablet, tapped a few times, and frowned. Then his eyebrows rose. Linda. His voice was careful now. Measured. He is a Diamond Elite member. He is on the Special Services list. He looked at Terence, recognition dawning. The flag is a privacy flag, not a security one. It means he has been pre-cleared. He is one of our biggest accounts. The color drained from Linda's face. Her mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. I did not. The system just showed. Carlos turned to Terence, his expression apologetic. My apologies, Mr. Blake. She is new to this gate. Your seat is 1A, right this way. Enjoy your flight. He swiped his MasterCard, the gate beeped, and just like that, the barrier was lifted. Terence gave Carlos a small nod of thanks. Real gratitude. The kind that acknowledged someone who had done the right thing in a situation where the wrong thing would have been easier. Then he looked at Linda Morrison. Her face was a mask of humiliated rage. Not embarrassment, not regret. Rage. The particular fury of someone who had been caught, not someone who had been wrong. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was angry that it had not worked. Terence held her gaze for one long moment. Then he turned and walked down the jet bridge, his footsteps echoing on the metal flooring. He did not hear what happened next. He did not hear Linda Morrison lean into her radio as soon as he was out of earshot. He did not hear her hiss instructions to the lead flight attendant on the other end of the line. Ben, she muttered, her fingers flying across her keyboard. I am logging a note on passenger Blake 1A. Her eyes were hard as she typed. Each keystroke carried the weight of revenge, verbally aggressive, disruptive at gate, potentially non-compliant. Recommend monitoring throughout flight. She hit send. The second paper cut. This one deeper than the first. This one would be waiting for him on the other side of that door. Behind her, the line continued to move. Carlos Torres watched Linda for a moment, something troubled in his expression, but he said nothing. He had a job to keep, a family to support. He had seen what happened to people who pushed back too hard against co-workers who had been there longer. Pick your battles, his mother used to say. You cannot win them all. But as Carlos watched the jet bridge door close behind Terence Blake, he could not shake the feeling that this particular battle was just beginning. At the back of the boarding line, Rachel Foster, the travel blogger from the lounge, watched the exchange with sharp eyes. She had seen the confrontation, seen Linda's face twist with contempt, seen the supervisor step in, seen Terence Blake walk away with dignity intact. But she had also seen something else, something that made her uneasy. She had seen Linda's fingers on the keyboard after Terence left, seen the satisfied smile that crossed the woman's face, seen the look she exchanged with another gate agent, a look that said, "This is not over." Rachel pulled out her phone. Not to post, not yet, but to record a voice memo. Gate B24, she whispered. GVA Flight 212, just witnessed something I did not like. Black passenger in first class. Completely polite, Gate agent gave him hell anyway. She is typing something now. Something feels wrong. Following up. She tucked the phone away and joined the line. 15 minutes later, she boarded the plane. And 15 minutes after that, she understood exactly why her instincts had been screaming. The jet bridge stretched before Terence like a corridor between worlds. Behind him, the chaos of the terminal, the fluorescent lights, the suspicious eyes and manufactured confrontations. Ahead of him, 7 hours of peace, a lie-flat seat, a laptop full of work, the quiet hum of engines carrying him across an ocean. Or so he thought. He walked slowly, deliberately, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. He had handled Linda Morrison. He had kept his composure. He had not given her what she wanted, a reaction, an outburst, something she could point to and say, "See, I told you he was trouble." That was the game. He had learned the rules long ago. The moment you raised your voice, you lost. The moment you showed anger, you became the aggressor. The only way to win was to be so controlled, so measured, so impossibly calm that your restraint itself became an indictment of their behavior. It was exhausting. It was dehumanizing. But it was survival. His phone buzzed. A text from Nina. "Everything okay? You usually text when you board." He typed back. "Minor hiccup at the gate. All clear now." A pause. Then define minor hiccup. He smiled despite himself. Nina Rodriguez had been his executive assistant for 8 years. She had started as a temp covering for someone's maternity leave and had made herself so indispensable that Terence had tripled her salary within 6 months just to make sure no one poached her. She was 34 years old, Hispanic, raised in the Bronx by a single mother who cleaned offices at night. She had put herself through community college, then NYU, then an MBA at Columbia, all while working full-time. She was smarter than half the MBAs Terence interviewed, and tougher than all of them. She also had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong. "Gate agent questioned my right to exist," he typed. Supervisor fixed it. Standard Tuesday. Her response came immediately. "I hate Standard Tuesdays." "Me too. Talk in 7 hours." He put the phone in his pocket and stepped through the aircraft door. The cabin of the Boeing 777-300ER first class was designed to be an oasis. Global Voyager Airlines had spent millions on the refurbishment lie-flat seats that converted to beds. Sliding doors for privacy, 24-inch entertainment screens, and a color palette of cream and navy that whispered luxury without screaming it. Seat 1A was at the front of the cabin, a private suite, with its own window, its own storage, its own little universe. Terence had flown this route dozens of times. He knew exactly where the power outlets were, which angle to adjust the seat for optimal laptop work, how to position the reading light so it did not glare on his screen. He settled in with the efficiency of practice. Hoodie off, revealing a simple black T-shirt. Laptop out of his bag charger plugged into the port. A bottle of water he had brought from the lounge. He never trusted airplane water placed in the holder. He was ready for 7 hours of uninterrupted work, ready to lose himself in spreadsheets and projections and the cold comfort of numbers. Then the commotion started. "Oh, darling, yes, just here. Put the Louis in the overhead. No, be careful with the Birkin. That is not a suitcase, that is my handbag. It costs more than your car." The voice was loud, entitled, and impossible to ignore. Terence glanced up to see a woman perhaps in her late 50s making her way down the aisle. She was draped in a cacophony of designer logos, a Burberry scarf, a Gucci tracksuit, the aforementioned Birkin bag clutched to her chest like a shield against the common people. Her hair was blonde, professionally styled into waves that probably required their own flight attendant. Her makeup was immaculate. Her jewelry caught the cabin lights and sparkled with the kind of excess that bordered on performance. This was Victoria Ashworth. She settled into seat 1B directly across the aisle from Terence with the air of someone taking possession of territory. Her eyes swept the cabin, cataloguing, assessing, judging. When they landed on Terence, they stopped. She did a double-take so obvious it was almost theatrical. Her gaze traveled slowly from his joggers to his t-shirt to his face. Her lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. Then she turned to the flight attendant hovering nearby, a man in his late 30s with a smug expression and perfectly gelled hair. "Excuse me, Victoria," said her voice pitched to Carrie. "Is there a reason he is in first class?" The flight attendant, his name tag, read. Bradley Hoffman glanced at Terence. Something flickered in his eyes. Something that looked like recognition, but not of Terence's face. Recognition of an opportunity. "I will look into it," Mrs. Ashworth Bradley said smoothly. "We want to make sure you are comfortable." Terence heard every word. He was meant to. That was the point. He kept his eyes on his laptop screen, his fingers on the keyboard, his expression carefully, deliberately blank. Let them talk. Let them scheme. Let them think they were in control. He had learned long ago that the people who announced their power rarely had any. The ones who truly held the cards never showed their hand. Not until they were ready to play it. Bradley Hoffman had been a flight attendant for 12 years. In that time, he had developed what he called instincts, the ability to look at a passenger and know within seconds whether they would be trouble. The woman with too much carry-on luggage, who would argue about overhead space. The businessman who had had too many drinks in the lounge. The family with young children who would spend 7 hours making everyone's life difficult. He prided himself on these instincts. He believed they made him good at his job. What he did not realize was that his instincts were just biases wearing a uniform. He saw what he expected to see, found what he expected to find, and confused his prejudices for perception. When he had received Linda Morrison's note about the passenger in 1A, verbally aggressive, disruptive, potentially non-compliant, Bradley had felt a surge of satisfaction. He had known the moment he saw the man in the hoodie that something was off. The note confirmed it. Never mind that Terence Blake had done nothing wrong. Never mind that he was sitting quietly working on his laptop asking nothing of anyone. Bradley had his note. He had his instincts. He had the righteous certainty of someone who had already decided the story and was just waiting for reality to catch up. He approached Terence's suite with the air of a man performing an important duty. "Sir, I need to verify your boarding pass." Terence did not look up from his laptop. "You scanned it at the door. It is just a routine check, sir." Bradley's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "We have had some concerns." Now Terence did look up. His eyes met Bradley's calm, assessing, revealing nothing. "Concerns about what?" "Just standard protocol, sir." The smile widened. "Your boarding pass, please." Terence reached into the seat pocket where he had stored his documents and handed over the pass without a word. Not because he had to, but because sometimes the quickest way through a wall was simply to walk around it. Bradley studied the pass with exaggerated attention. He knew exactly what it said. Seat 1A, first class, all the proper codes and clearances. But he wanted Terence to wait, to feel inspected, to understand who was in charge here. "I see," Bradley said finally. "Well, let us know if you need anything." He walked away without returning the pass. Terence watched him go. Then he leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes for a moment. The game had begun. He recognized all the pieces. The passenger across the aisle who had questioned his presence, the flight attendant who had verified his ticket with theatrical suspicion, the note he had not seen but could feel hanging over him like a target. They wanted him to react, to give them something they could point to, something they could use. He would not. He never did. But that did not mean he was not paying attention. Near the galley at the front of the cabin, a young flight attendant stood watching. Her name was Eleanor Vasquez, and she was 26 years old, New enough to the job that she still believed in doing it, right, experienced enough to know when something was going wrong. She had seen Bradley's approach to 1A, seen the way he had demanded documents from a passenger who had already been cleared, seen the smile that was not a smile, the performance masquerading as protocol. She had seen Bradley do this before. Different flights, different passengers, always the same pattern. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged bottles in the service cart. She wanted to say something. She knew she should say something. But Bradley had been here for 12 years, and she had been here for 12 months. She had seen what happened to people who challenged him. Not yet, she told herself. Wait for the right moment. She did not know if that moment would come. But she knew that standing by and watching felt worse than the fear of speaking up. Across the aisle, Victoria Ashworth was making herself comfortable with the particular fuss of someone who wanted everyone to notice. "My pillow is not right," she announced to no one in particular. "It is too flat. And this blanket is this cashmere. It does not feel like cashmere." Bradley hurried over all solicitous attention. "Let me fix that for you, Mrs. Ashworth. We want you to have the best possible experience." "I should hope so." Victoria sniffed. "Do you know who my husband is?" "He has contracts with this airline. Millions of dollars in contracts." "Of course, Mrs. Ashworth. We are honored to have you." Terence kept his eyes on his laptop, but he heard every word. The name, the husband, the contracts. He filed it away in the part of his mind that never stopped cataloguing information, never stopped seeing patterns. He did not know yet that this woman would play a role in what came next, but he was beginning to sense the shape of things, the way certain people clustered together drawn by the gravity of their shared assumptions, the way power and prejudice wore the same perfume. Rotha held a Hispanic man in his mid-30s, traveling with a young son who looked about 5. Michael Torres was a contractor from Queens, taking his boy to visit family in London. It was not first class they were seated in the premium cabin just behind, but their path had taken them through this section during boarding. Michael had seen the gate agent's confrontation. He had heard Victoria Ashworth's comments. He had watched Bradley Hoffman's performance with the boarding pass. Now, settling his son by the window and tucking a tablet into the seat pocket for later, Michael caught Terence's eye. A small nod passed between them. No words, just acknowledgement. "I see what is happening. I am watching. You are not alone." Terence returned the nod. Something loosened slightly in his chest, not much, but enough. Witnesses mattered. Witnesses were protection. When your word against theirs was always an uphill battle, having someone else's eyes on the situation could mean the difference between justice and disaster. The cabin was filling now. Economy passengers streaming past first-class passengers, settling in the particular choreography of boarding nearing its end. A safety video played on the screens. Flight attendants mimed emergency procedures at their stations. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Gregory Walsh. We are looking at clear skies and a smooth flight today, about 6 hours and 45 minutes to London Heathrow." Terence opened a new document on his laptop. Meeting notes for tomorrow. The London deal. Numbers and projections and the careful architecture of transactions worth hundreds of millions. Normal work for a normal flight. That is what he wanted to believe. That is what he hoped would happen. But deep in his gut, in the place where his survival instincts lived, he knew better. He had felt the weight of Linda Morrison's stare as he walked away. He had seen the look Bradley Hoffman and Victoria Ashworth exchanged, the unspoken alliance of people who had decided he was a problem. This was not over. It was just beginning. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engines hummed to life. Through the window, Terence watched the terminal recede, the fluorescent lights, the bustling gates, the world he was leaving behind. 7 hours to London. 7 hours of peace. Or so he hoped. Now, before we get to what happens next, I need you to understand something. What you are about to see is not rare. It happens every single day. On planes, in hotels, at banks, in boardrooms. The only difference is most of the time no one is recording. And most of the time the person being humiliated does not have the power to do anything about it. They file a complaint that goes nowhere. They write a letter that gets a form response. They tell their friends, their family, their therapist. And then they move on because what else can they do? The machine is bigger than any one person. But Terence Blake, he had power. He just had not decided to use it yet. If you have ever been in his shoes, dismissed, doubted, or denied because of how you looked, drop a comment below. Share your story. I want to hear it. And keep watching, because what happens at 35,000 feet is going to change everything. The flight attendants are closing the cabin doors. The plane is taxiing to the runway. And in first class, a man who built an empire from nothing is about to discover exactly how much the world wants to tear it down. The plane had been in the air for 90 minutes when the first sign of trouble appeared. Terence had settled into his work rhythm spreadsheets, emails, projections for the London meeting. The cabin had quieted after the initial flurry of beverage service and meal selection. Most passengers were dozing or watching movies, the particular suspended animation of long-haul travel. Across the aisle, Victoria Ashworth had not quieted. She was on her phone, a violation of the electronic device policy, but one that Bradley Hoffman seemed remarkably uninterested in enforcing. Her voice carried through the cabin with the particular volume of someone who wanted to be overheard. "Yes, darling, I am in first class. You know how it is. The service is adequate, though not what I expected. And the clientele." She paused dramatically, her eyes sliding toward Terence. "Let us just say it is not quite what it used to be. Standards are slipping everywhere these days." Terence kept his eyes on his screen. He had heard variations of this speech his entire adult life. The not quite said insults. The coded complaints. The way certain people could communicate contempt without ever using words that would hold up in court. You learned to let it wash over you. You had to. If you stopped to fight every battle, you would never move forward. You would be exhausted before noon. But Victoria Ashworth was not finished. "Excuse me," she called out, flagging down Bradley Hoffman. "Could you check something for me? I am concerned about the situation across the aisle. Is that person supposed to be here?" Bradley glanced at Terence with an expression of practiced concern. "I will look into it, Mrs. Ashworth. We want to make sure you are comfortable." He walked to Terence's suite and stood at the entrance. A wall of blue uniform blocking the light. "Sir, I am going to need you to close your laptop. We are about to start beverage service." Terence looked up. "I thought beverage service ended 20 minutes ago. There has been a delay. New service is starting. Please close your laptop." It was such a small thing, such a petty exercise of power. But that was the point to remind Terence that in this space, at this time, Bradley Hoffman made the rules. Terence closed the laptop without argument. He had learned long ago that small surrenders cost nothing and bought time. The real battles were worth saving your energy for. Bradley did not leave. "Is there something else?" Terence asked. "I just want to make sure we do not have any issues." The smile again, that predatory curve of lips that pretended to be pleasant. "You seem tense." "I am not tense." "Good, let us keep it that way." Bradley walked back to Victoria, and Terence heard them murmuring together. The words were too soft to make out, but the tone was clear. They were planning something. Coordinating. Building a narrative. From row 3, Michael Torres had watched the entire exchange. His son was asleep against the window, but Michael was wide awake, his contractor's instincts telling him that something was being constructed here, something that would hurt someone. He caught Terence's eye again and gave another small nod. still watching, still seeing. Terence returned the nod, grateful for the acknowledgement. At the galley, Elena Vasquez was preparing the drink cart with hands that would not stop shaking. She had heard Bradley's conversation with Victoria. She had heard the plans being whispered. She knew what was coming. "Bradley," she said quietly, "the passenger in 1A has not done anything wrong. I verified his ticket when he boarded. He has been completely quiet." Bradley turned to her with eyes like ice. "Elena, I am going to give you some advice. Stay out of things that do not concern you. But this is a passenger management issue. I have been doing this for 12 years. I know what I am looking at." "Do you?" Elena swallowed hard. "I know what I am seeing." "And what is that?" She did not answer. Could not answer, because what she was seeing was her career on the line if she said the wrong thing. Her apartment, her mother's medical bills, all of it balanced against doing what was right. "That is what I thought," Bradley said. "Now finish the cart, and keep your observations to yourself." He walked away, and Elena stood frozen in the galley, the weight of her silence pressing down on her chest. Back in 1A, Terence had reopened his laptop. But he was not looking at spreadsheets anymore. He was looking at the reflection in the dark corners of his screen, watching Bradley's movements, tracking Victoria's glances, mapping the shape of the trap being built around him. He had been in traps before. He had escaped them all. But this one felt different, more coordinated, more deliberate. His phone had no signal at 35,000 feet. He could not call Nina, could not text David Brennan, could not summon the cavalry. He was alone up here, alone in a metal tube hurtling through the sky, surrounded by people who had decided he was a threat before he had ever opened his mouth. The thought should have frightened him. Instead, it sharpened something, made him more alert, more ready. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way he had faced everything else in his life. With silence, with patience, with the quiet certainty that truth has a weight that lies can never match. The seatbelt sign dinged. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence. And in first class, the countdown to disaster continued its relentless march. 2 hours into the flight, Bradley Hoffman made his move. Terence had ordered sparkling water, no ice, no lime, just the water. A simple request, the kind that flight attendants fulfill 100 times per flight without incident. Bradley brought it personally, not because it was his job. The junior attendants usually handled beverage service, but because he wanted to. "Your water, sir." He placed the glass on Terence's tray table with exaggerated care. "Thank you." Bradley did not leave. He stood there, hovering at the edge of Terence's suite, his body language radiating something that was not quite threat, but was not quite not. "Working on something important." He nodded toward the laptop screen. "Yes, must be nice. Getting to fly first-class work on your little projects." The emphasis on little was unmistakable. "What do you do anyway?" "Athlete musician. Some kind of entertainer." Terence looked up, met Bradley's eyes directly. "Finance. One word. Flat. Final finance." Bradley's smile flickered. "Interesting." He shifted his weight, and his elbow bumped the tray table. The glass of sparkling water wobbled. Terence's laptop wobbled with it. Terence reached out to steady both, a reflex born of protecting a device that contained more sensitive information than most banks. "Careful," he said. "Just one word. Quiet. Not angry. Not aggressive. Just careful." Bradley's eyes lit up. "Are you threatening me?" The question was loud. Deliberately loud. Projected for the entire first-class cabin to hear. Terence froze. He recognized what was happening, the trap springing shut, but recognition did not make him any less caught. I said, careful. "You almost knocked over my water. Sir, I am going to need you to calm down." Bradley's voice had risen another notch, performing for an audience now. Other passengers were looking up. Victoria Ashworth was leaning forward with unconcealed interest. "I am calm. Your tone is aggressive, sir. I am feeling unsafe." The words hung in the air like a verdict already delivered. Aggressive. Unsafe. The magic words that could transform any black man from passenger to threat in the span of a heartbeat. Victoria Ashworth seized her moment. "Oh my God!" she gasped loud enough to reach the cockpit. "What is happening? Is he being violent?" "Mrs. Ashworth, please stay seated." Bradley held up a hand, the gesture of a hero managing a crisis. "I have this under control." "I knew it." Victoria's voice dripped with vindicated fear. "I knew something was wrong. I could tell the moment I saw him." "Call the captain." Terrence's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at him to defend himself, to point out the absurdity of what was happening, to expose the theater of it all. But he knew better. He knew that defense would be read as aggression, that raising his voice would prove their point, that the trap was designed exactly for his struggle. So he stayed still, stayed silent, let the storm rage around him while he remained the eye of it. In row 2, Rachel Foster had her phone positioned under a magazine recording everything. Her heart was pounding. She had seen injustices before, documented them, posted them, watched them go viral. But this was different. This was happening in real time in front of her, and she was the only one capturing it. "This is insane," she whispered to herself. "He is literally just sitting there." In row 3, Michael Torres stood up. "Hey," his voice cut through the manufactured panic. "I have been watching this entire flight. This man has not done anything wrong." Bradley turned sharply. "Sir, sit down. This does not concern you. It concerns everyone when you treat a paying customer like a criminal. One more word and you are next." Michael looked at his son, still sleeping by the window. Looked at the faces of the other passengers, some sympathetic, some suspicious, most just wanting the disturbance to end so they could get back to their movies. He sat down, but he did not look away. In the galley, Elena Vasquez was shaking so hard she had to grip the counter to stay upright. She had watched Bradley's performance, watched him knock the tray table himself, watched him twist a nothing moment into a crisis. She stepped forward before she could talk herself out of it. "Bradley, his ticket is valid. I checked it myself when he boarded. He has been completely quiet the entire flight." Bradley turned on her with a look that could have frozen jet fuel. "Stay out of this, Elena, or I will write you up for insubordination. I am just stating facts. Facts do not matter." His voice dropped to a hiss. "Protocol does." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she did not back down. "Then protocol is wrong. One more word." She fell silent, but she did not leave. She stood there a witness that Bradley could not dismiss a crack in the narrative he was trying to build. Bradley turned back to Terrence, his face flushed with anger now the mask slipping. "Sir, I need you to hand me your laptop. Excuse me, for safety. Until we can assess the situation, you are not taking my laptop. Sir, I am giving you a direct order. No." The word was quiet, but absolute. Not defiant, definite. The difference was everything. Bradley reached across Terrence, his arm stretching toward the laptop on the tray table. Whether he intended what happened next or not would be debated later. What mattered was what happened. His arm swept across the tray. The laptop flew off, tumbling toward the floor. Terrence caught it. Reflexes honed by years of protecting devices worth more than most houses. But the motion brought him half out of his seat, his body twisting to intercept the fall. That was all Bradley needed. He is aggressive. The scream split the cabin air. He grabbed me. Call the captain. Terence stood frozen. Laptop clutched to his chest, his mind struggling to process the speed with which reality had been rewritten. I did not touch you. He is threatening me. Victoria Ashworth was on her feet now, pointing like a witness at a witch trial. I saw it. He attacked him. I did not. Captain. We need the captain. And then in the chaos, in the screaming and the accusations, and the passengers staring and the phones rising like weapons. In that moment, a small voice cut through everything. Mama, why are they yelling at that man? Terence turned. In row 5, a little black girl, maybe 8 years old, was staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. Her mother was trying to pull her back to shield her from the scene, but the girl would not look away. He did not do anything bad, she said, her voice trembling but certain. I was watching. He was just working on his computer. The cabin fell silent. Even Bradley seemed momentarily frozen, the child's clarity cutting through his manufactured crisis. The girl's mother, a black woman in her 30s, her face a mixture of fear and pride, met Terence's eyes. In that look was everything: the recognition, the exhaustion, the fury, the sorrow. The shared experience of 1,000 moments, just like this one. Terence looked at the little girl, looked at her eyes full of confusion and courage, looked at the future she represented, the battles she would fight, the paper cuts she would collect, the dignity she would have to defend 100 times before she was grown. Something in him shifted. Something that had been calculating survival suddenly started calculating something else. This was not just about him anymore. It was about her. About Michael's son sleeping in row 3. About every person who had ever been told they did not belong and had no power to prove otherwise. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. This is Captain Walsh. I am being informed of a disturbance in the cabin. Flight attendants, please report. The cockpit door opened, and everything changed. Captain Gregory Walsh was 55 years old and had been flying for 3 decades. He walked into the first-class cabin with the authority of a man who had never had his authority questioned. Silver hair, square jaw, the kind of bearing that looked good on recruitment posters. He did not ask what happened. He already knew, or thought he knew. He had received Bradley's call. He had heard the words aggressive, threatening, unsafe. He had made his decision before he ever stepped out of the cockpit. What is the situation? His voice was clipped. Military. Final. Bradley stepped forward, adjusting his uniform like a soldier reporting to command. Sir, this passenger has been verbally aggressive since boarding. He just physically threatened me in front of the entire cabin. Mrs. Ashworth witnessed it. Victoria nodded vigorously, clutching her Birkin bag like a shield. He is dangerous, Captain. I have been watching him the whole flight. Something about him just seemed off. And then he attacked your crew member, right in front of me. Captain Walsh turned to Terence, looked him up and down, saw the hoodie, the joggers, the face, made his calculation. Sir, I need you to explain yourself. Terence took a breath, kept his voice level, kept his hands visible. Captain, I have been sitting in my seat for 2 hours. I have not raised my voice. I have not touched anyone. Your flight attendant knocked my laptop off the tray table and is now claiming I threatened him. I have done nothing wrong. The captain's eyes narrowed. My flight attendant says otherwise. Your flight attendant is lying. Watch your tone. My tone is calm. My words are factual. There are witnesses who saw what actually happened. From row 2, Rachel Foster spoke up. Captain, I have been recording since the confrontation started. The passenger is telling the truth. He never touched anyone. He never raised his voice. The flight attendant knocked over his laptop and then started screaming. Captain Walsh barely glanced at her. "Recording on this aircraft is against company policy. Delete that footage immediately or you will be removed as well." Rachel went pale but kept her phone in her hand. "I am a journalist. This is documentation of—" "I do not care what you are. This is my aircraft, my rules. Delete it." Rachel did not delete it, but she stopped talking. Michael Torres tried next. "Captain, I am in row 3. I have been watching the entire flight. The man in 1A did not do anything. He was just working on his laptop when the flight attendant started harassing him. Sir, one more word and you will be deplaned with him. Is that what you want with your child on board?" Michael looked at his sleeping son, felt the trap closing. The same trap that always closed the choice between speaking truth and protecting family. He sat down, hated himself for it, but stayed silent. Elena Vasquez stepped forward one last time, tears streaming down her face. "Captain Walsh, with all due respect, I have been watching this situation from the beginning. Mr. Blake has been completely compliant. There has been no aggression, no threat, no—" "Elena." The captain's voice was ice. "You are relieved for the rest of this flight. We will discuss your insubordination when we land. Sir, I am just telling you what I saw. What you saw is not what I see. And I am the captain. My crew reported a threat. I have a valued passenger confirming that threat. And I have a man who will not take responsibility for his actions." He turned back to Terence. "Sir, you are being removed from this aircraft." The words landed like a gavel. "We are over the Atlantic," Terence said quietly. "Then I suggest you get comfortable. We are turning around. You are diverting an entire flight because your crew lied about a passenger who has not done anything wrong. I am diverting this flight because I have a safety concern. And I am the only one who gets to decide what constitutes a safety concern." Terence looked at the captain, looked at Bradley Hoffman's smug smile, looked at Victoria Ashworth's satisfied smirk. "You are going to regret this," Terence said. "Not a threat. A statement. A prediction." "Is that a threat, sir?" "It is a fact. The kind that stands up in court. The kind that destroys careers. The kind that bankrupts companies." He paused. "But you will find that out soon enough." The captain's face hardened. "Security will escort you off when we land. Do not move from your seat. Do not interact with crew or passengers. Do not make this worse than it already is." He turned and walked back to the cockpit, the door closing behind him with the finality of a prison cell. Bradley Hoffman leaned down to Terence's ear. "Have a nice flight, sir." Then he walked away, and Terence was alone with the wreckage of his dignity. The plane turned around. 2 hours back to JFK. 2 hours of sitting in 1A while security officers stood in the aisle nearby watching him like he might explode at any moment. 2 hours of passengers staring, whispering, forming opinions based on the narrative they had been fed. 2 hours of silence. Terence used the time wisely. Not for anger. Anger was wasteful, inefficient, a luxury he could not afford. He used it for something more productive observation. He watched Bradley Hoffman preen and perform, basking in the attention of Victoria Ashworth, who praised his bravery and quick thinking. He watched Captain Walsh make his periodic announcements. "We apologize for the delay, folks, but safety is our top priority." Watched the man never once acknowledge that the safety concern was a passenger who had been sitting quietly doing his work. He watched Elena Vasquez banished to the rear galley, wiping tears from her eyes. Watched her keep looking toward the front of the cabin, toward him, her face a mixture of guilt and helplessness. He watched Rachel Foster phone, still in hand, still recording, still bearing witness. He watched Michael Torres murmur to his waking son, explaining nothing, because what was there to explain? That sometimes grown-ups did cruel things and other grown-ups let them, that the world was not fair and there was nothing a 5-year-old could do about it. And he watched the little black girl in row 5. Jasmine, he had heard her mother call her. She was still staring at him, still trying to understand. Her mother had given up trying to shield her. Instead, she was holding her daughter's hand, speaking to her in low tones that Terence could not hear but could imagine. He knew what the mother was saying. He knew because his own mother had said it to him a lifetime ago. There are people who will see your skin before they see you, who will decide what you are before you open your mouth. You cannot control what they think. You can only control how you respond. Hold your head high. Do not give them what they want. And never ever forget who you really are. The plane began its descent. JFK appeared through the window, the familiar sprawl of terminals and runways, the same place he had left 4 hours ago, back where he started with nothing to show for it but a cancelled meeting and a lifetime's worth of humiliation. Or so they thought. The wheels touched down. The plane taxied to the gate. The seatbelt sign dinged. And then the walk began. Terence stood up slowly, carefully. He collected his laptop bag, the laptop that Bradley had tried to take, that he had protected like it contained state secrets, which in a sense it did. He adjusted his hoodie, squared his shoulders. Security officers flanked him immediately. "Sir, please come with us." He did not resist, did not argue, did not give them a single thing they could use against him. He just walked. The cabin watched him go. Every eye, every face, every judgment. But something had changed in the time he had sat there. Something in the quality of the attention. Some passengers still looked at him with suspicion, with fear, with the comfortable certainty that authority must have had its reasons. But others looked troubled, uncertain, like they were witnessing something that did not add up. In row 2, Rachel Foster held up her phone slightly as he passed. Her eyes met his. A small nod. "I got everything. I am with you." He returned the nod. "Thank you." In row 3, Michael Torres looked up from his son's sleeping form. His face was twisted with shame, the shame of a man who had stayed silent when he should have spoken, who had prioritized safety over justice. "I am sorry," he whispered as Terence passed. "I should have done more." Terence paused, looked at Michael, looked at the little boy curled against the window. "You were a witness," he said quietly. "That matters. And you have a son to protect. Do not apologize for that." He kept walking. In the galley, Elena Vasquez stood with red eyes and trembling hands. "I am so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I tried. You spoke up." Terence stopped in front of her. "When everyone else was silent, you spoke up. Do not ever forget that, and do not let them make you forget it either." Elena could not respond. She just nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. He kept walking, and then he reached row 5. The little girl Jasmine was watching him with those wide eyes. Her mother had given up trying to pull her back. Some things you just have to witness. Terence stopped. He knelt down slightly, bringing himself to Jasmine's eye level. "You are right," he said to her. "I did not do anything bad." "Then why are they taking you away?" The question so simple, so unanswerable, so devastating in its innocence. Terence looked at her mother, saw the pain there, the exhaustion, the fury held in check by the need to protect a child from truths she was too young to carry. Because sometimes, Terence said carefully, people make mistakes. They see someone who looks different, and they get scared even when there is nothing to be scared of. They make decisions based on that fear. And sometimes those decisions are wrong. That is not fair. No, it is not. What are you going to do about it? The question hung in the air. What are you going to do about it? As if an 8-year-old had cut straight to the heart of everything. Terence smiled, the first real smile since he had boarded the plane. Something he said. I am going to do something. Not right now, but soon. And when I do, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that being treated unfairly does not mean you have to accept it. It means you have to be patient, and smart, and ready. He stood up, looked at her mother. She is brave, he said. Do not let the world take that from her. The mother's eyes filled with tears. I will not. Terence walked on. At the door of the aircraft, Bradley Hoffman stood waiting. His smile was a declaration of victory. Have a nice evening, sir. I hope you learned something today. Terence stopped, looked at Bradley. Really looked at him, past the smug expression, past the uniform, past the petty cruelty that passed for power. He did not say a word, did not need to. Something in his eyes made Bradley's smile flicker, made him take a half-step back, made him wonder for just a moment if he had made a terrible mistake. Captain Walsh did not even look at Terence as he exited. The man was already on his radio, already moving on to the next problem, already forgetting the passenger whose trip he had destroyed. Terence walked down the jet bridge and into the fluorescent glare of Terminal 4. Behind him, the plane would board again. The passengers would resettle. The flight would continue to London 3 hours behind schedule. By morning, most of them would forget what they had witnessed. But Terence Blake would remember. He walked through the terminal security officers at his side until they reached a small office near the gates. There he was officially released. No charges, no arrest. Just removed for crew safety concerns. They handed him back his passport. His boarding pass, his dignity such as it was. You are free to go, sir. We apologize for any inconvenience. Inconvenience? The word burned like acid. Terence walked out of the office and found a quiet corner of the terminal. He pulled out his phone, turned it on. 17 missed calls from Nina, 9 from David Brennan, 243 emails. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened his notes app and typed 3 sentences. Linda Morrison, Bradley Hoffman, Captain Gregory Walsh. Then he added a 4th. Global Voyager Airlines, subsidiary of Stratos Global Holdings. He looked at the words for a long moment. Then he added 1 more. 90 days. He put the phone in his pocket and walked toward the exit. The machine had done its work. It had chewed him up and spit him out, confident in its power, secure in its protection. But the machine did not know what it had done. It did not know who it had targeted. Terence Blake was not just a passenger. He was not just a victim. He was a predator. And now he had chosen his prey. Now, if you are still watching, you might be thinking, that is it. He just walked off. No lawsuit, no confrontation, no viral video, destroying everyone involved. And you would be right to wonder, because here is what they do not teach you about revenge. The loudest response is rarely the most effective. The person who screams gets attention. The person who files a complaint gets a form letter. The person who goes viral gets 15 minutes of fame and a settlement that comes with a non-disclosure agreement. But the person who waits, who plans, who moves in silence while their enemies celebrate, that person gets everything. Terence Blake did not need to yell. He did not need to sue. He did not need to go viral and hope the court of public opinion would deliver justice that the real courts never could. He needed to be patient. And what he did over the next 90 days would destroy everything his enemies thought they knew about power. Because Linda Morrison, the gate agent who filed a false report, Bradley Hoffman, the flight attendant who fabricated an attack, Captain Gregory Walsh, who turned a plane around based on lies, Victoria Ashworth, who played witness to crimes that never happened. They thought they won. They thought they were protected. They thought the system that had always covered for people like them would continue to do so forever. They were wrong. If you want to see what real karma looks like, not the hashtag kind, but the kind that rewrites industries and destroys careers and leaves people wondering how they ever thought they were untouchable, keep watching. And if you have not already hit that subscribe button. Because you are about to witness something that has never been done before. Let us continue. Terminal 4 was quieter now. Terence sat in a molded plastic chair near Gate C31, watching planes taxi in the darkness. The boarding area was empty. His flight to London was already 3 hours into its rescheduled journey, carrying passengers who would tell the story of what they had witnessed to friends and family, and anyone who would listen. He had been sitting there for 45 minutes. Thinking, planning, running scenarios in his mind, like the quantitative models he had built his fortune on. His phone buzzed again. "Nina, for the 18th time." He answered. "Terence, what happened? I have been trying to reach you for hours. David has been calling me every 5 minutes. The London meeting is asking where you are." "Are you okay?" "I am fine. You do not sound fine." "What happened?" He told her. All of it. The gate agent, the flight attendant, the fabricated incident, the captain, the walk of shame through a cabin full of strangers, the little girl who asked why they were taking him away. When he finished, Nina was silent for a long moment. "What do you need?" she finally asked. No sympathy, no outrage, just the question that mattered. That was why he trusted her. That was why she ran his life. Information. I need a full profile on Global Voyager Airlines. Ownership structure, parent company, board composition, largest shareholders, debt obligations, executive compensation. Everything. You are not going to sue them. It was not a question. Nina knew him too well. No. What are you going to do? Terence looked out to the window at the planes. The same planes that had just rejected him. The same company that had decided he was a threat to be removed. Something bigger. Start the research tonight. I want a preliminary report by morning. Consider it done. She paused. Terence, whatever you are planning, be careful. These companies have lawyers. They have PR teams. They have nothing. They are a publicly traded subsidiary of a mediocre holding company with an underperforming stock price and a board full of old men who do not know the world has changed. They think they are untouchable because they always have been, because no one has ever had the resources to touch them. And you do? I do. Another pause. Then I will have the report ready by 7 a.m. Thank you, Nina. Thank me when it is over. She hung up. Terence's next call was to David Brennan, his chief legal counsel. David, I need you to locate a woman named Rachel Foster. She was on my flight. Travel blogger. She recorded everything that happened. Find her. Secure that footage. Legally. Are we building a lawsuit? Not yet. Evidence preservation. I want options. What kind of options are we talking about? The kind that takes time to explain. Just find her, David. Make sure that video does not disappear. I will have someone on it within the hour. The call ended. Terence opened his email and typed a message to his London counterpart, apologizing for missing the meeting, explaining there had been a travel emergency. He did not go into details. Did not need to. In his world, travel emergency could mean anything from a cancelled flight to a family crisis. No one would question it. Then he opened his browser and started searching. Stratos Global Holdings, parent company of Global Voyager Airlines, market cap 42 billion, stock price down 18% over 3 years, multiple analyst downgrades, customer satisfaction at historic lows. 3 discrimination lawsuits settled quietly in the past 2 years. Executive compensation up while profits declined. A company that was struggling. A company that was vulnerable. A company that with enough pressure in the right places could be taken. Terence closed his phone and leaned back in the plastic chair. 90 days. That is how long a hostile takeover typically took when you had the resources and the resolve. 90 days of quiet accumulation, of building positions, of recruiting allies, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He had the resources. 8 billion in personal assets. 15 billion under management at Apex. Lines of credit with every major bank. Relationships with sovereign wealth funds and pension systems and family offices around the world. Did he have the resolve? He thought about Bradley Hoffman's smug smile, about Victoria Ashworth's performance, about Captain Walsh refusing to even look at him. He thought about Eleanor Vasquez crying in the galley, about Michael Torres's shame, about Rachel Foster's courage. He thought about Jasmine, the little girl who had asked, "What are you going to do about it?" Something he had told her. "I am going to do something." Yes, he had the resolve. Terence Blake stood up, collected his bag, and walked toward the exit. In the terminal behind him, flights continued to board. Passengers continued to travel, and the world continued to turn as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something that would echo through boardrooms and stockholder meetings, and eventually inevitably through the careers of everyone who had decided that a black man in a hoodie could not possibly deserve a first-class seat. The countdown had begun. Day 7. Nina Rodriguez spread the research across Terence's desk like a battlefield map. "Here is what we are looking at," she said, pointing to the organizational chart. Global Voyager Airlines is a wholly owned subsidiary of Stratos Global Holdings. Stratos is a diversified conglomerate airlines, hotels, car rentals, some logistics. Total market cap around 40 billion. Who runs it? CEO is James Whitmore, 62 years old. Old guard. Been there for 15 years. The stock has underperformed the market for most of his tenure, but the board keeps renewing his contract. He has got relationships. What kind of relationships? The kind where half the board members were his college roommates or play golf at the same club. It is a boys' network. Very protected. Very insular. Terence studied the chart. Largest shareholders, institutional mostly. Vanguard has 8%, BlackRock has 6%, State Street has 4%. No single dominant holder. The board controls about 3% collectively. Whitmore himself has less than 1%. So it is diffuse. No controlling block. Exactly. Which means it is vulnerable to an activist campaign. Or a hostile takeover. Nina nodded. It would take between 12 and 15 billion to accumulate a controlling position. Maybe less if we can get other institutional holders to flip. Terence leaned back in his chair. 12 to 15 billion. A massive number for most people. For him it was achievable, not easily, not quickly, but achievable. Start building positions, he said. Quietly. Stay under the 5% disclosure threshold as long as possible. I do not want anyone to know we are coming. And the end goal. He looked at her. I am going to buy the company, and then I am going to fire everyone who was on that plane. Nina did not flinch. She had worked for Terence long enough to know that when he made a decision, he followed through. Understood, she said. I will start moving capital today. Day 30. The position had grown to 4.9%, just under the threshold that would require public disclosure. Terence had spread the purchases across multiple funds, multiple accounts, multiple trading desks, all coordinated to avoid detection. He flew to London, commercial economy class, anonymous, to meet with investors. The pitch was simple. Stratos Global Holdings is undervalued. The board is weak. Management is complacent. I am making a move. Are you in sovereign wealth funds listened? Pension systems listened. Family offices whose only loyalty was to returns listened. One by one they committed capital. Not to Apex directly, that would be too obvious, but to parallel vehicles that would move in concert when the time came. The war chest was growing. Day 45. Terence sat in his office, reviewing the latest acquisition reports. The combined position his funds plus aligned investors had reached 9%. Still below the radar. Still building. David Brennan walked in with a folder. "Update on our friends from Flight 212, he said. Sliding the documents across the desk. Terence opened the folder. Bradley Hoffman. Still working. Got a commendation last week for exceptional passenger management. The captain Gregory Walsh promoted. He is now chief pilot instructor for the training division. Terence's jaw tightened. And the gate agent Linda Morrison. Employee of the month. Silence filled the office. The injustice of it, the people who had destroyed his trip, who had humiliated him in front of 200 strangers being rewarded while he sat in New York plotting in secret, was almost too much to contain. Almost. Good Terence said finally. Let them celebrate. Let them think they won. It makes what comes next even sweeter. What about the video Rachel Foster's footage? Secured encrypted and backed up in 3 locations. She has agreed not to release it publicly, in exchange for an exclusive interview when the time is right. She understands the play. Terence nodded. Good. We are going to need that footage. But not yet. Soon. Day 60. The position had reached 15%. Terence was now the largest single shareholder of Stratos Global Holdings, though the world did not know it yet. The shares were distributed across a dozen entities, all controlled directly or indirectly by Apex Venture Partners. The board received an anonymous letter. Change is coming. James Whitmore, the CEO, laughed when he read it. Activist investors, he told his board. We have dealt with their kind before. They make noise, we ride it out, they go away. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Day 75. Terence made his move. The 13D filing hit the SEC website at 4 p.m. Eastern, a formal disclosure announcing that Apex Venture Partners and affiliated entities had acquired 22.3% of Stratos Global Holdings and intended to seek board representation and management changes. The financial media exploded. Apex Venture Partners launches hostile bid for Stratos Global. Activist investor targets airline conglomerate. Terence Blake declares war on Stratos board. The stock price jumped 18% on speculation. Hedge funds started placing bets. Analysts started publishing research. The business world turned its attention to a company that had been content to drift in mediocrity for years. James Whitmore finally read Terence Blake's name. His face went white. Day 85. The board meeting was called for 9 a.m. Terence arrived at Stratos Global headquarters at 8:45, accompanied by Nina Rodriguez, David Brennan, and a team of lawyers whose collective billing rate exceeded the GDP of a small island nation. He wore a bespoke navy suit, Italian shoes, a watch that cost more than most employees' annual salaries. This was not a day for hoodies and joggers. This was a day for armor. The boardroom was on the top floor, all glass walls and mahogany tables, and the particular hushed tension of power being contested. 10 board members sat around the table. At the head, James Whitmore, looking like a man who had just discovered his castle had been built on sand. Terence walked in and took a seat at the opposite end of the table. Gentlemen, he said. Ladies, my name is Terence Blake. I believe you have been expecting me. James Whitmore tried to seize control immediately. Mr. Blake? he said, his voice carrying the forced authority of a man who knew he was losing. "I do not know what you think you are accomplishing with this circus, but this board will not be intimidated by activist tactics." Terence did not blink. "I am not an activist, Mr. Whitmore. I am your largest shareholder, the largest shareholder this company has ever had. And I am here to discuss the future of an enterprise that has been comprehensively mismanaged for years. That is a matter of opinion. No, it is a matter of record." Terence nodded to Nina, who began distributing folders to each board member. 3 years of declining stock price, customer satisfaction at a 15-year low, multiple discrimination lawsuits settled with non-disclosure agreements, executive compensation up 40%, while operating margins declined by 12%. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. This company is failing its shareholders. It is failing its customers. It is failing its employees. And it is failing the basic standards of corporate governance that any competent board should uphold. A board member, silver-haired, distinguished the kind of man who had been on corporate boards since before Terence was born, leaned forward. "Mr. Blake, is this personal? We have heard rumors about an incident involving one of our flights." Terence met his eyes. 3 months ago, I was removed from a Global Voyager flight. First class. Seat 1A. I had done nothing wrong. Nothing. Your gate agent filed a false report calling me aggressive. Your flight attendant fabricated an incident and claimed I attacked him. Your captain turned the plane around without conducting any investigation whatsoever. He pulled out his phone, connected it to the room's display system. "I would like to show you something." The video began. Rachel Foster's footage. 10 minutes of unedited truth. The confrontation with Bradley Hoffman. Victoria Ashworth's performance. Captain Walsh's decision. Terence being walked off the plane while passengers stared. And at the end, the little girl, Jasmine, asking Mama, "Why are they taking that man away?" He did not do anything bad. The room watched in silence. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. One looked away entirely. When the video ended, Terence spoke again. "This is not personal, Mr. Chairman. This is evidence of a pattern of failures in culture, in training and accountability that has infected this organization from top to bottom. I am here to fix it. The question is whether this board will help me, or whether this board will be replaced." James Whitmore's face had gone from white to red. "You cannot just walk in here and—" "I can. And I am." Terence's voice was ice. "I am calling for a vote of no confidence in James Whitmore as CEO of Stratus Global Holdings. That is not how this works. The bylaws require—" David Brennan spoke up. "Section 4. 7 of your corporate charter allows any shareholder with more than 20% to call an emergency vote on executive leadership with 48 hours notice. We provided that notice 48 hours ago. The vote is procedurally valid." Whitmore looked around the table. His allies, the golf buddies, the college roommates, the men who had rubber-stamped his compensation for 15 years would not meet his eyes. They could count. 22% of the company wanted him gone. The institutional investors, the Vanguards and BlackRocks and State Streets, had already signaled their dissatisfaction with the stock price. The proxy advisory firms were recommending change. The writing was on the wall, and everyone in that room could read it. "Call the vote," one board member said quietly. "Let us get this over with." The chairman, a man who had served on this board for 20 years, cleared his throat. All those in favor of removing James Whitmore as CEO of Stratus Global Holdings, effective immediately. 7 hands rose. All those opposed, 3 hands, including Whitmore's. "Motion carries," the chairman said, his voice hollow. "James, I am sorry." Whitmore slumped in his chair. 15 years of building this empire of collecting stock options and golden parachutes and the deference of people who needed his approval, all of it gone in the span of a vote. "This is not over," he muttered. "Yes, it is." Terence stood, walked to the head of the table, looked down at the man who had run this company for a decade and a half. "Security will escort you from the building. Your severance will be calculated according to your contract. Your stock options are forfeit due to the removal for cause. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Whitmore stood gathering what remained of his dignity. "You think you have won," he said. "But these people," he gestured at the board, "they will never accept you. They will never respect you. You are an outsider, Blake. You always will be." Terence smiled, the first genuine smile he had worn since this all began. "I am not trying to be an insider, Mr. Whitmore. I am trying to burn the insider system down." He nodded to security. "Please escort Mr. Whitmore out." They led him away. The door closed, and Terence Blake stood at the head of the table, surveying the men and women who now worked for him. "I would like to propose a motion," he said, "to name Terence Blake as interim CEO and chairman of the board effective immediately." The vote was unanimous. The king had taken his throne. The next morning, 3 people sat waiting in a conference room on the 30th floor of Stratus Global headquarters. They did not know why they had been summoned. They did not know who had summoned them. They just knew that HR had called with instructions. "Be here at 9 a.m., non-negotiable." Linda Morrison was annoyed. "I do not know why I am here," she complained to no one in particular. "This HR review is cutting into my overtime. I was supposed to work the morning shift." She had been a gate agent for 11 years. In that time, she had seen management fads come and go, corporate restructurings rise and fall, executives arrive with grand plans and depart with golden parachutes. She had learned that the key to survival was keeping your head down, doing your job, and letting the chaos flow around you. This meeting was chaos. She intended to let it flow. Bradley Hoffman was smug. "It is probably about my passenger management scores," he said, adjusting his uniform even though he was not on duty. "They are the highest in the fleet. Maybe they are making me a trainer." He had heard rumors about the change in leadership. Some investor taking over, shaking things up. He figured it was his chance to shine. People like him always rose in times of change, smooth talkers who knew how to work the system. Captain Gregory Walsh was indignant. "This is a waste of my time," he announced to the room. "I was pulled from a simulator session." "A simulator session? Do you know how important pilot training is? The union is going to hear about this." He had been flying for 30 years. He had seen CEOs come and go, boards rise and fall, companies merge and split. Through it all, pilots remained essential. Untouchable. You could not run an airline without them. Whatever this meeting was about, it did not concern him. The 3 of them made awkward small talk for 10 minutes, united only by their shared annoyance. They did not know each other well. Different departments, different hierarchies, different orbits. But they shared something they did not realize, a common thread that connected them all to a day 3 months ago. The door opened. In walked Nina Rodriguez, holding a tablet. Behind her came David Brennan, holding a thick legal binder. And behind them both, in a bespoke navy suit that cost more than their combined monthly salaries, walked Terence Blake. The shift in the room was immediate. Linda Morrison's face went white. Her hand flew to her mouth. Bradley Hoffman's smug smile evaporated. His eyes went wide, his mouth forming a perfect O of shock. Captain Gregory Walsh just stared. His pilot's brain, trained to process information quickly and accurately, was failing to find a checklist for this situation. "Good morning," Terence said. His voice was calm, pleasant, conversational. He sat at the head of the table with the ease of a man who belonged there because he did. "Please," he added, gesturing to their seats. Stay seated. None of them had moved. My name is Terence Blake. I am the new chairman and CEO of Stratus Global Holdings. He let that sink in, watching their faces cycle through disbelief, recognition, and the dawning horror of understanding. That means, he continued, I am your new boss. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. We have met before. Terence said, his tone almost friendly now, like he was catching up with old acquaintances. It was a few months ago. Global Voyager Airlines Flight 2 and 12 from JFK to Heathrow. I was the passenger in seat 1A. He looked at each of them in turn. The one you had removed. Linda Morrison made a sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. Bradley Hoffman's face had gone from white to grey. Captain Walsh gripped the arms of his chair like he was preparing for turbulence. Ms. Morrison. Terence turned his full attention to her. You were first. You filed a false report. You called me verbally aggressive and disruptive at gate because I had the audacity to ask for the seat I had paid for. Your lie was the first domino. Linda opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did not know. I was just what? Just doing your job, just following your instincts, just assuming that a black man in comfortable clothes could not possibly belong in first class. She had no answer. There was no answer. Terence turned to Bradley. Mr. Hoffman, you picked up that lie and ran with it. You verified my boarding pass with theatrical suspicion. You knocked my laptop to the floor and then screamed that I had attacked you. You fabricated an incident out of nothing, and you did it in front of 200 witnesses. Bradley's voice came out strangled. I was protecting the passengers. You were protecting your ego. You saw a black man who did not look the way you thought a first-class passenger should look, and you decided to make him a problem. When he was not a problem, you created one. Finally, Terence settled his gaze on the captain. And you, Captain Walsh. You were the decider. You had choices. You could have investigated. You could have reviewed the evidence. You could have listened to the crew members who told you the truth. You could have been a leader. He leaned forward. Instead, you took the word of your lying crew and a wealthy passenger over a man sitting quietly in his seat. You turned around an entire aircraft, costing this company hundreds of thousands of dollars, stranding 200 passengers, destroying my schedule based on nothing more than prejudice dressed up as protocol. Walsh found his voice. I followed FA regulations. There is a chain of command. You hid behind regulations. For the first time, Terence's voice rose a whip crack in the quiet room. You used protocol as a shield for your own bias. I have read your file, Captain. 12 passenger conflict reports in 7 years, every single one involving a minority passenger. You are not a leader. You are a bully who confused his epaulets for a crown. The silence that followed was absolute. 3 people sat frozen, their careers and their futures hanging by threads they had not even known existed until moments ago. Terence stood up from the table. As of 9 o'clock this morning, he said, his voice returning to its calm, measured tone. All 3 of you are terminated for cause. The words landed like hammer blows. Gross negligence, falsification of company reports, willful endangerment of a passenger. He ticked off each charge. That is me, by the way. The passenger you endangered? Linda Morrison found her voice first, or what was left of it. You cannot do that, she shrieked. I am in the union. We have protections. David Brennan stepped forward, opening his legal binder. Your collective bargaining agreements contain a for cause termination clause. He said, his voice the practiced calm of a lawyer delivering bad news. Falsification of company records triggers that clause. We have video evidence. We have sworn affidavits from witnesses on the flight. We have the internal reports, you filed reports that our investigation has determined were deliberately misleading. He closed the binder. Your unions have already been notified of the evidence. They have declined to contest the terminations. You are on your own. Bradley Hoffman's face had gone from grey to green. But I was Employee of the Month, my scores. Your scores, Terence interrupted, measured how well you managed passengers according to your own biased definition of management. They did not measure truth. They did not measure fairness. They did not measure basic human decency. He walked to the window, looked out at the fleet of global Voyager planes sitting at their gates waiting to carry passengers to destinations around the world. Firing you is not karma, he said, his back to them. Firing you is just business. It is the minimum response to the maximum failure. Any competent CEO would do the same. He turned around. But I am not just any CEO, and I am not satisfied with minimum responses. He nodded to Nina, who pulled up a presentation on the room's display screen. As of today, I am launching a new initiative. $100 million funded personally and through corporate matching programs. A scholarship and pipeline program in partnership with historically black colleges and universities to actively recruit, train, and place black pilots, black flight attendants, and black executives throughout Stratos Global. The 3 terminated employees stared at the screen, uncomprehending. We are going to change the face of this company, Terence continued. We are going to build a culture where what happened to me can never happen again. Where passengers are judged by their tickets, not their skin. Where crew members who lie face consequences, and crew members who tell the truth are protected. He smiled. A genuine smile. Perhaps the first one since this nightmare began. And I am naming the initiative after you 3. Linda's mouth fell open. Bradley made a choking sound. Walsh just stared. The Morrison-Hoffman-Walsh Initiative for Corporate Integrity. Terence let the words hang in the air. That is right. Your names. Your legacy. You cannot. Linda started. I can. And I am. Your names will not be remembered as good employees. They will be remembered as the reason this program exists. Every time a talented young black pilot earns their wings through this initiative, they will have you 3 to thank. Every time a black flight attendant gets promoted into leadership, they will know it is because of what you did and what the company did to make sure it never happened again. He picked up a folder from the table and flipped through it casually. Oh, one more thing. Mrs. Victoria Ashworth, you remember her, the passenger who corroborated your lies? Her husband had a $200 million contract with this company. Our audit committee found irregularities, overcharging, under-delivering, the kind of cozy deal that happens when executives and contractors are too close. He closed the folder. We terminated the contract this morning. Davenport Industries stock is down 32% as of an hour ago. I believe Mr. Ashworth is currently explaining to his board how he lost their biggest client. Terence set down his coffee cup. You are done. Your badges are deactivated. Your company email has been disabled. Your careers in this industry are over. Security will now escort you from my building. The door opened. 2 security guards stepped in. Linda Morrison burst into tears. Bradley Hoffman looked like he might vomit. Captain Gregory Walsh rose to his feet, his face a mask of barely contained fury. This is not right, he said, his voice shaking. I served this company for 30 years. I have a perfect safety record. You cannot just... I can, Terence said quietly. And I have. The difference between us, Captain, is that when I exercise power, I do it based on facts. When you exercised power, you did it based on fear. And that is why I am standing here and you are being escorted out. He nodded to the security guards. Take them. They went. Linda sobbing, Bradley stumbling, Walsh rigid with impotent rage. The door closed behind them. Terence Blake stood alone in the conference room, looking out at the planes that now bore his responsibility. Thousands of employees, millions of passengers, billions of dollars. He had not wanted this, had not planned for this. 3 months ago he had just wanted to fly to London for a meeting. But sometimes the universe puts you in positions you did not choose, facing battles you did not start, with responsibilities you did not ask for. The question was not whether you wanted to be there. The question was what you did once you arrived. Terence knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to build something better. Terence had one more meeting that day. Elena Vasquez sat nervously in his office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had been summoned without explanation, and after witnessing what happened to her colleagues, she was not sure what to expect. Ms. Vasquez, Terence said, settling into the chair across from her, not behind his desk, but beside her as equals. "Do you know why you are here?" She shook her head. "No, sir. I mean Mr. Blake. I mean, Terence is fine. I do not know why I am here," she admitted. "But if it is about what happened on the flight, I want you to know that I tried. I tried to speak up. Bradley threatened to write me up, and the captain relieved me, but I tried. I know you tried." She stopped, looked at him with something like hope. "You spoke up when everyone else stayed silent." Terence continued. "You risked your job to tell the truth, in a cabin full of people who saw what was happening and said nothing. You were the one who stood in front of the captain and said, 'This is wrong.'" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I should have done more. I should have. You did what you could. That matters. That is all any of us can do." He leaned forward. "Elena, why did you speak up? It would have been easier to stay quiet. Safer. Nobody would have blamed you." She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "My father. Your father. He was a passenger once. 15 years ago. Different airline, but the same treatment. He was flying to see my grandmother before she died. They pulled him off the plane for suspicious behavior. He missed saying goodbye to his mother because someone decided he did not look like he belonged in his seat." The tears were falling freely now. He never flew again. Said he could not trust the skies anymore. Said they were not made for people like us. He drove everywhere after that. Took him 3 days to reach her funeral. She looked up at Terence. "When I saw what they were doing to you, I saw my father. I could not let it happen again. I could not just stand there." Terence nodded slowly. "Understanding. Elena, as of today, you are promoted to Director of Passenger Experience for Global Voyager Airlines. Your job is to make sure no one's father ever feels that way again. No one's mother, no one's child. You will have a team, a budget, direct access to me." Elena stared at him. What you heard me. But I am just a flight attendant. I have only been here a year. You are the person who spoke up when speaking up could have cost you everything. That is worth more than 20 years of looking the other way." She could not speak. The tears were coming too fast. Terence handed her a tissue. "Take the weekend," he said. "Start Monday. And Elena, thank you for what you did on that plane. For your father. For everyone who has ever been told the sky is not for them." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you, Terence. I will not let you down. I know you will not." She left, and Terence turned to the next item on his agenda. Rachel Foster's video had been preserved, authenticated, and secured. She had agreed to hold off on public release in exchange for an exclusive interview when the company was ready to tell its story. She was being offered a position as head of customer advocacy communications, a role that would let her use her platform to hold the airline accountable from the inside. Michael Torres, the passenger from row 3, had been tracked down by Terence's team. He was receiving lifetime Diamond Elite status for himself and his family. Free flights forever as a thank you for being willing to speak up even when speaking up came with threats. A letter had been sent to his home. Terence's personal words. "You were a witness when it mattered. That took courage. Your son is lucky to have a father who knows the difference between right and wrong, even when the wrong thing is easier. Thank you." Michael would frame that letter, would show it to his son when the boy was old enough to understand. "This is what standing up looks like, mijo, even when you are scared." 6 months later, Terence Blake boarded a plane. Global Voyager Airlines Flight 89, JFK to London Heathrow. First class, seat 1A. The same route. The same seat. A different world. The company had transformed in the half-year since his takeover. Customer satisfaction scores were up 38%. Employee morale had climbed after the deadwood was cleared, and the culture started to shift. The Morrison-Hoffman-Walsh initiative had already placed 47 black professionals throughout the organization. Pilots, flight attendants, managers, executives. The stock price had risen 53%. Analysts who had predicted Terence's hostile takeover would destroy value were publishing retractions and upgrades. But none of that was why Terence was smiling as he settled into his seat. He was smiling because of who greeted him at the door. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Blake. Can I get you anything?" The flight attendant was young, maybe 18 or 19. Her uniform was crisp and new, her name tag gleaming under the cabin lights. It read, Jasmine Williams. Terence looked at her. Really looked. The same wide eyes. The same brave face. 10 years older, but unmistakably the same girl who had sat in row 5 on the worst flight of his life. The girl who had asked her mother, "Why are they taking that man away?" She did not recognize him at first. Passengers blurred together when you were new to the job, still learning the rhythms and routines. "Just water," Terence said. "No ice." "Right away, sir." She turned to go, then stopped. Turned back. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or just the strange feeling that she had seen this face before. "I am sorry," she said. "Have we met before?" Terence smiled. "Once? A long time ago. You asked me a question." "I did. You asked me what I was going to do about something unfair." The recognition hit her then, full force. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, you are him." The man from the plane. The man from the plane, Terence confirmed, the one they took away. Jasmine Williams, no longer a little girl, now a young woman in uniform, stood frozen in the first-class galley, her eyes filling with tears. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember everything. I told my mama about it for years. She said you were the bravest man she had ever seen, how you did not yell, did not fight, just walked off with your head high." "I was not brave," Terence said. "I was patient. There is a difference. You kept your promise." "What promise?" "You said you were going to do something." "And you did. You bought the whole airline." She laughed, a sound caught between amazement and joy. "You actually bought the whole airline?" "I did. And now I work for you. I got the scholarship, the one you started. I never thought I could be a flight attendant. My mama said we were not made for the skies. But then I saw the program, and I thought maybe things have changed. Maybe they really have changed." Terence looked at her. This young woman who carried her father's doubts and her mother's fears and her own brave questions all the way into a uniform that said she belonged here. "They are changing," he said. "Not fast enough, not completely, but they are changing. And you are part of that change now." Jasmine wiped her eyes, straightened her uniform, found her professional composure. "Water, no ice," she said. "Coming right up, Mr. Blake." She walked toward the galley, her steps confident, her head high. Terence watched her go, watched her move through a space she had been told was not for people like her, watched her prove simply by existing that the old rules were dying. He settled back into his seat. The same seat he had been pulled from 6 months ago. The same view. The same hum of engines preparing for flight. But everything had changed. He pulled out his laptop, opened a new document, started typing notes for his next project, another company to fix another industry, to reform another door to open for people who had been told they could not walk through. But first he added 3 lines at the top of the page. The best revenge is not getting even. It is making sure no one else has to fight the same battle. Build doors. Leave them open. The plane lifted off. Through the window, New York receded, the city where he had built his empire, where he had been humiliated and then vindicated, where he had learned that power means nothing if you do not use it for something beyond yourself. Ahead lay London. Ahead lay work. Ahead lay the endless, exhausting, exhilarating process of trying to make things better than he had found them. But for now, in this moment, at 35,000 feet, Terence Blake allowed himself something rare. He allowed himself to hope. The little girl who had asked why they took him away was now serving passengers on a flight she had been told was not for people like her. That was not irony. That was not coincidence. That was legacy. And it was just the beginning. Terence Blake did not buy an airline for revenge. He bought it for Jasmine, the little girl in row 5 who grew up to wear the uniform. He bought it for Elena's father, who never flew again after the skies told him he did not belong. He bought it for every passenger who has ever been pulled aside, questioned, doubted, and dismissed because someone in authority decided they did not look the part. The 3 employees who thought they held all the power, they lost everything, not just their jobs. Their names became the title of the very program designed to ensure their kind of bias could never take root again. Every time a young black pilot earns their wings through the Morrison-Hoffman-Walsh initiative, those 3 people are reminded that their cruelty became the foundation of someone else's opportunity. Victoria Ashworth, the passenger who performed outrage while a man's dignity was destroyed, her husband's company collapsed. She does not fly first class anymore. And Terence. He still wears hoodies on planes sometimes, still gets looks, still sees the calculations happening behind certain eyes. But now, when someone questions whether he belongs in first class, he just smiles. Because he does not just belong there, he owns it. Here is what I want you to remember from this story. You do not have to be a billionaire to stand up for yourself. You do not need to buy a company to prove your worth. You do not need wealth or power or connections to know who you are. All you need is the courage to hold your head high when the world tries to push you down. The patience to wait for justice when the easy path is anger. The wisdom to know that the loudest response is rarely the most effective. The person who underestimated you today might be asking for your help tomorrow. The door someone closed in your face might be the door you build for someone else. That is not just karma. That is legacy. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, but it tells the algorithm that this story matters. That stories about justice and dignity and quiet strength deserve to be heard. Second, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about people who were underestimated and became undeniable. Stories about karma that takes its time but always arrives. Stories that remind you that no matter what anyone says, you belong wherever you choose to be. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who has been doubted. Someone who has been dismissed. Someone who is sitting in their own version of Seat 1A right now, wondering if they have the strength to keep going. They do. And this story might be the reminder they need. Drop a comment below and tell me. Has something like this ever happened to you? What did you do? What would you do differently now? I read every single comment, and your stories matter just as much as Terence's. Someone out there is doubting you right now, underestimating you, deciding who you are before you ever open your mouth. Let them, and then show them exactly who they are dealing with. Until next time, stay patient, stay powerful, and never forget. The best revenge is becoming undeniable.